It's official. NASCAR just set off a bomb that could blow apart the future of 2311 racing. And this isn't about a points penalty, a fine, or some minor rules shuffle. No, this is far bigger. NASCAR is preparing to sell off the very charter that 2311 insists is rightfully theirs. If that sale goes through, it won't just sting. It could end the team entirely. Let that sink in. A team co-owned by NBA legend Michael Jordan and Cup Series champion Denny Hamlin, one of the brightest, most high-profile teams on the grid, could be erased, wiped out. And not because of poor performance, but because of a legal war that's spiraling out of control. But to understand why this is so explosive, you've got to understand what's really at stake here. Back in 2016, NASCAR introduced something called the charter system. Think of it like a franchise license. A charter guarantees a Cup Series team a spot in every race, along with a share of the prize money and TV revenue. Without it, you're an open team. That means no guaranteed entry, no guaranteed payouts, and no long-term security. It's the difference between running a stable business and gambling your future every single week. When the system launched, many saw it as a lifeline. It gave sponsors reassurance, it made the sport look more like other major leagues, and it allowed team owners to treat their investment like a real asset, something they could sell later. But critics said from day one that it handed NASCAR too much power, because at the end of the day, NASCAR controls the charters. Fast forward to 2024. NASCAR unveiled its new charter extension deal, covering 2025 through 2031. Almost every team signed it, but two teams didn't: 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. They refused, saying the deal was unfair, restrictive, and a way for NASCAR to lock down even more control. By refusing, they gave up their existing charters under the rules of the current agreement. NASCAR pounced, saying, "Fine, if you won't sign, we'll just give your charters to someone else." That's when 2311 and Front Row fired back, suing NASCAR and accusing them of running a monopoly, or more specifically, a monopsony, where one powerful buyer controls the entire marketplace. They argued NASCAR was punishing them simply for standing their ground. And for a while, it looked like the teams might win. In December, a judge temporarily ordered NASCAR to recognize them as still holding their charters. It was a big win, at least on paper. But then in April, everything flipped. An appeals court sided with NASCAR, stripping away that protection. Suddenly, 2311 and Front Row were exposed, vulnerable, and one step away from disaster. Now NASCAR has made its move. This week, the sanctioning body filed notice that it has lined up a buyer for one of the disputed charters. They said in no uncertain terms that unless the judge blocks them, the transfer is going ahead for the 2026 season. And here's the twist. This isn't just any charter, it's one of the exact charters that 2311 and Front Row say still belong to them. If it's sold, the teams say the consequences are catastrophic. In their legal filings, they didn't sugarcoat it. Plaintiffs will indisputably suffer irreparable harm if NASCAR is allowed to carry out its plan to immediately sell their charters, because that would put 2311 and Front Row out of business following the 2025 Cup Series season. That's not a warning shot, that's the end game. And here's why. Without a charter, the entire business model collapses. Sponsors have opt-out clauses that allow them to walk away if a team loses guaranteed entry. Drivers, too, can leave contracts if stability disappears. And without sponsors or drivers, what's left? Nothing. This is especially devastating when you remember what 2311 represents. Michael Jordan's entry into NASCAR in 2020 wasn't just another billionaire buying into a sport. It was a cultural moment. For years, NASCAR struggled to expand its audience, to diversify its fan base, and to bring in global attention. Jordan's involvement did all of that at once. It was a signal that NASCAR could reach mainstream audiences again. And now, less than 5 years later, that investment could be destroyed in a courtroom. But 2311 isn't alone. Front Row Motorsports is right there in the fight. They may not have Jordan's fame or Hamlin's star power, but they've been a gritty, resilient team, punching above their weight for years. They've worked with smaller budgets, scrappy crews, and still managed to deliver wins, like Michael McDowell's stunning Daytona 500 victory in 2021. For them, losing a charter isn't just losing a seat at the table, it's losing everything they've built from the ground up. So what's NASCAR's defense? They say they're not obligated to keep doing business with teams that are suing them. In their eyes, they have every legal right to reassign those charters, and they argue that delaying the sale would hurt preparations for the 2026 season, which they claim can't be put on hold just because of a lawsuit. But the teams say that's nonsense. They're pushing for a new injunction to freeze NASCAR's sale until the trial in December. Their reasoning is simple. If NASCAR wins later, fine, sell the charter then. But if NASCAR loses and the charters are gone forever, no ruling can undo the damage. Justice delayed in this case would be justice denied. And here's where things get darker. The teams accuse NASCAR of more than just selling charters. They say this is part of a much bigger pattern, a pattern of control that stretches across the entire sport. Their lawyers argue NASCAR has spent decades buying up track operators, forcing exclusivity agreements, and shutting out competition. They claim NASCAR isn't just a sanctioning body, it's a business empire that dictates who gets to race, where they race, and under what terms. In one of their most cutting lines, the teams ripped apart NASCAR's defense that other forms of racing, like dirt tracks or amateur leagues, could be substitutes. They wrote, "NASCAR cannot seriously argue that dirt track or amateur racing are substitutes for the top-tier stock car teams competing in the Cup Series." In other words, you can't compare the NFL to a backyard flag football game and pretend it's the same thing. And that's the chilling part. The teams argue that NASCAR isn't just playing hardball. They're trying to wipe out potential threats before the trial even happens. Their filings warn, otherwise, plaintiffs will face the imminent destruction of their businesses regardless of how the jury rules. Which raises the scariest question of all. Even if 2311 and Front Row win in December, will there be anything left to save? Now, this isn't the first time NASCAR has flexed its power. Over the years, smaller teams have often complained that the sanctioning body makes decisions that favor big names and established giants while leaving independents behind. But never before has the fight been this open, this public, or this high stakes. So what happens next? On Thursday, Judge Kenneth Bell will hear both sides in Charlotte. He could issue an injunction to block the sale, or he could let NASCAR proceed. But don't expect an immediate answer. A ruling could take days, maybe even weeks, and the outcome could reshape the future of the entire sport. If NASCAR wins, the charter system remains tightly locked down. Every other team will get the message loud and clear. Don't challenge the system. If 2311 and Front Row win though, it could trigger a tidal wave of lawsuits, sponsor demands, and maybe even leadership changes at the very top of NASCAR. So here's the question we'll leave you with. Should NASCAR have the power to shut down a team mid-lawsuit, or are they crossing the line to protect their empire? Because make no mistake, this isn't just a legal fight, it's a survival fight, and NASCAR just walked into court with a steel chair.